everyone, and welcome on into the Unabated podcast. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me, as always, Mr. Unabated himself, Captain Jack Andrews. Jack, it's good to be back. We've had a couple weeks off here. We took our bye last week, and the week before that, Gina was on having a fantastic discussion with Jordan Hammond. Highly recommend people go and check that out if you want to hear more about the litigation side of sports betting when it comes to dealing with gaming control boards, appealing decisions, things like that. Very fantastic episode there. But Jack, we are back, and NBA is in full swing at this point this season. I don't think that any of Justin Fan, John Rodaba, or Stephen Byron Keach have seen the sunlight in weeks now.
Man, those guys, people don't understand. Like they work all day at the projections. The games happen, and then they start on the next day right away. Like they start their overnight projection process. It's impressive.
Yeah, what they do is just absolutely like the grind on that doesn't stop, and they're not even taking off for back-to-backs.
No, and there's 3 days in the NBA season where there is no game scheduled. We just had one, Election Day. The next one is Thanksgiving, and then they got to wait until the day of the NCAA tournament finals is the third day where well they get the All-Star break in the middle, but there are very few days off. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that is absolutely absurd, and they've been working real hard. And of course, if you want to check out their awesome work, head to unabated.com/NBA. Take a look at the fantastic projections that they're doing. Get yourself in on the game because I can tell you I've been betting them, and they've been going quite well for me, Jack. I know you have been having some similar success, but we are not here to talk NBA on this day. Instead, we're going to be sitting down, and I quite enjoy. We've done a few of these so far, and we're going to keep doing some more of them. But we're going to be talking about one specific angle of sports betting, and today we're going to be talking about what, for lack of a better term, kiosk jamming or betting at kiosks, and everything that you need to know to become an all-star when it comes to trying to skirt around a little bit and get some extra action down without maybe killing an account. And that brings us to question one right away. Explain what kiosk jamming is and why it is that people might be doing it.
Yeah, so any sports book that has a retail presence, they have automated betting kiosks where instead of going up to the window, you can go to a kiosk. And it's usually a similar interface to what you find on their app or online. And look, kiosk betting is good for the sports book because it allows them to lower their staffing cost. It allows them to process bets more efficiently. Um, it also allows players, you'll notice like everybody that's at a kiosk is putting in a lottery ticket. They are putting in their 16 game parlay or something like that. And they're just making it up as they stand on the spot. So it allows them to have that person that's fidgeting around with their bet to not hold up a window and hold up a clerk and hold up a line. They're just there on that kiosk. So you'll find a lot of sports books offer quite a few kiosks in relation to their size. The least I've seen is like 2 kiosks, but I've seen properties where they have dozens, literally dozens of kiosks for you to use. So that's the good side, right? But the downside is a lot of these sports books, they want to know who the players are. They want to know who's making that bet. And kiosk allows for somewhat anonymous betting. And as a result, sports books tend to hawk the kiosks. And it might not come from the person you think is watching you. It's typically the eye in the sky watching you, or someone on the back end who's seeing every bet that comes through at kiosk number 62. And they can pull up and see, who's on there. There's a camera that's pointed right at you as if like you're at an ATM machine. Plus, you also have the pan, tilt, zoom cams that are in those black domes in any casino. They're able to get a pretty good look at who you are and retrace your steps. So you're never really truly anonymous using these. And I guess, we'll talk a little bit more about ways you can stay more anonymous if you'd like to. And also some of the things that maybe you think are they're onto you, but they're really not onto you. And we'll get to that.
That's right. We are going to be talking about all of that here, and more because, quite frankly, it is like you mentioned. It's a great way to keep your accounts healthy when it comes to betting on certain things that you might want to hit. Like, for example, I know one thing that we really stress is don't bet WNBA props with an account that's got your name on it. It's a great way for you to get down on some stuff that could be account kryptonite otherwise, right?
Yeah, exactly. And look, sports books know that as well. So you often find that they're going to limit either the amount you can bet without a player's card or without identification at a kiosk, or they'll just limit the amount they'll take at a kiosk on a certain type of bet. But WNBA props are the ones that I always say, don't bet this on your mobile device unless it's a burner account, because these will burn through accounts. They're account kryptonite. So yeah, going to a kiosk is one way around that. And even when you bet at a kiosk, it's not like if they have a $50 limit, you don't want to just be betting the same thing over and over again, $50 at a time, just boom, 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 boom. Look, you used to be able to do that. These kiosks used to be like little gold mines. It's not so much that way anymore. Anymore, you need to be a little bit selective in what you're showing on the kiosk. And one of the ways that I think is the best way to kind of hide your action is to put in parlays, but put them in different order. So, in other words, if you're trying to get down on a certain prop and you're parlaying it with another uncorrelated prop, go ahead and put that in, and maybe a three-leg parlay, and put it in ABC the first time. And then when you come back to the kiosk later, put it in BCA, that order. That little thing right there could be enough to kind of throw the person who's monitoring the kiosk off your scent, because they're like, did I see that exact parlay come through before? And then they see, it's Joel Embiid rebounds as the first thing rather than the Karl Anthony Towns rebounds. And so you say, oh, well, no, that was a different prop this time, different parlay.
Now, let's talk about that rebetting a little bit more because you can sit there and if for example they say, oh, without a player's card we only take $200. You can sit there and go, okay, cool, $200 on this reuse selection, $200 on this, and you can get you can get to where you want to go. How how far is the limit that you're willing to take that before you say, okay, time to walk away and make the bet again another time? And I know that a lot of this is rule of thumb and there aren't hard and fast numbers. That's the fun thing about all of this. There are absolutely no black and white answers. I know that we have talked about this off air and also sourced some other opinions who gave completely different opinions. But but continue on there.
Yeah, this is the art of sports betting. This is the best. This is what I love, the art of sports betting. And you can't science the art of sports betting. So you can't come up with like, this is the strategy you need to do to be artful. It isn't. So what works in one shop might not work in another shop. So you need to kind of go with what would be the greatest common denominator of the entire situation. So if you know that getting one bet in at $200 will go right through, and you know that you have like five different bets to make, well, why not just go through your cycle of five different bets to make and then take a lap, as I say. And that may be take a lap around the casino. That may be go on to a sister property. That may be come back 10 minutes later. That may be go just move on down to a different kiosk in the line of kiosks. It's open to interpretation. But as you said, there are places where you could bet the same thing three or four times without it being a problem. Here are some of the trigger points, though, and these are trigger points that everyone needs to be aware of, because these aren't within the control of the sports book you're betting at. These are uh, financial crime penalty recommendations from FinCEN. And so the first one is $3,000. Anytime you transact more than $3,000, a fiduciary responsible uh, institution in a casino or sports book has to make an effort to know their customer. Now, this is called a soft check. And what a soft check means is they just need to find out your name. They don't need to check your ID. They don't need to run your social security number. They just need to make an effort to check your name at $3,000. And so often what you'll find is that sports books take that number down much further south than 3,000. A lot of them like to do 1,000. So if you transact more than $1,000 worth of bets in a day, they want to know, let me clarify, more than $1,000 in cash in bets in a day, they want to know your name. And typically, the way they do that is they make sure you're using your player's card. Now, are they certain that you're using your player's card? That's open for interpretation. But they usually require you either to have the card having been scanned into the kiosk, or they'll say, if you're at the window making a bet and you go over $1,000, they'll say, hey, you need to have a player's card or show us your player's card. This is this is not something that is meant to catch you just because you've made some bets at the kiosk. This is just their policy. And so a lot of times I know guys that they get on the kiosks and they ram jam and they make bets through and they do a lap and they come back and they ram jam and then they get a tap on the shoulder and the guy's like, do you have a player's card? And they panic and they run out the door. That's probably the wrong thing to do. In this situation, if you've just transacted just a couple thousand, the best idea is to have a player's card on you. Doesn't have to be, well, it should be your player's card. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But you can then just flash them the player's card. Go, oh, yeah, I got my player's card right here. Here you go. Um, don't necessarily hand it over. Just flash it to them. Say, yeah, I got a player's card. Or let them see the name and say, okay, Jack Andrews, thanks for showing that. Make sure you use that player's card in the future. That's usually enough. Now, if you go over 3,000, they're going to be a little bit more forceful.
Now, real
Uh,
quick, before you
yeah.
get to 3,000, let's say you show up to a kiosk and the person that was just there right before you had their player's card information in there and they don't check that out. Are you going to get in any trouble if you just run it through when it's still under their player's card? What's going on there?
I mean, that's a sneaky thing to do. If you can claim plausible deniability that you realize that their player's card was still up on the screen, that sounds like an innocent mistake to me.
Noted.
So, okay, we talked about 1,000, we talked about 3,000. The big one is 10,000. If you transact more than $10,000 in a single gaming day with a casino or sports book, they need to file a cash transaction report, CTR. And for that, they need to know your social security number and they need to know your occupation as well. Because this needs to get cross-referenced to any kind of IRS or FinCEN filing that you may make in the future. So it's important not to perjure yourself in a situation like this. You can't supply a fake social security number. You shouldn't supply a fake identification. Look, if this worries you, don't exceed $10,000 in cash. And that kind of brings me to the biggest impact that I think betting on a kiosk has is when you win a bet on a kiosk, you have a bet slip that is now worth, if you bet $200 at minus 110, you have a bet slip that's now worth about $380. That's $380 that is as good as cash, but is not considered to be cash. So that $3,000 cash transaction limit doesn't apply to that 380. And you have multiple bets that you've made. You may have $5,000, $10,000 in winning tickets at various amounts, maybe $400 to $500 a piece, and they're as good as having $400 and $500 bills in your pocket. And they're even better because they're not considered cash. So you can use those to bet on other bets without having to transact cash, both at kiosks as well as at the window. And again, a good clerk will realize you are not transacting cash, even if you go over the $1,000, and won't ask you for a player's card or ID if you're just transacting winning wagers.
Now, that is a great point too, because what about when it comes to the $3,000 for a FinCEN warning?
Yeah, so the $3,000 limit is a soft check.
Mhm.
And so they're supposed to, but that's again a cash transaction check. So that's $3,000 in cash in a day. Um, it's similar to if I were to play slots and I run up a ticket to 2,500 and I go to the cage to get it cashed. they'll just cash it right away. If I
Mhm.
run it up to $3,002, they will require a player's card or an identification for them to cash that ticket because they're going to give me more than $3,000 in cash.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, you will run into situations where a clerk, even if you're buying with tickets, doesn't realize you're not transacting cash. You can remind them, although that makes you look a little too smart most of the time. But the best thing is to stay away from that $3,000 limit in a transaction, especially with a person, if you can. But if you're going to be betting $5,000, $10,000 bets, which some of our listeners do, it's a whole different calculus, Tom. At that point, you are making sure you are friendly with the book as much as possible, and that you're not a threat, and that you're giving them ID and player's card whenever they want it. Kiosk betting is a little bit under that in terms of the hierarchy of betting. Kiosk betting is good for the guys that are betting a couple $100 here and there to get the bets down. I'm sure there are guys out there that are using kiosks to get down tens of thousands of dollars in bets. They are the kiosk masters, and they're probably a little bit more sought after in terms of casino surveillance and security than the guys that are just dinking and dunking for a couple $100 here and there and are avoiding detection that way.
Now, another thing that's really important to point out at this point, we talked about that $10,000 limit and how at that point they have to file a CTR report. Of course, the advice is don't spend more than 10. Don't get yourself to the point where you're involving figures more than $10,000. However, what can be even worse is purposely trying to go under that. Like I know someone who was limited to three bets at 3,300 a piece at a casino once, and they were like, oh, well, we have to file a suspicious activity report because he's trying to duck the $10,000 limit because he's coming up to 9,900 here. And he was like, no, I'd bet more if you gave me more. You limited me to this, and these were the three games I liked. But that is something that could be a very big problem for you if it is obvious that you are trying to duck this $10,000 limit and get right up as close to the threshold as you can, right?
Yeah, so that's actually called structuring, and it's a federal crime. Now, will they storm your house and search your house and throw you on the floor at gunpoint on structuring charges? No. But if you ever run into any other problem that could be related to a financial crime, if you are not completely honest on your taxes, or if you if the casino suspects you of doing something that is illegal in their casino, trust me, that structuring charge will be lobbied on top of that. And you don't want federal charges against you. You put yourself in a really bad position. Even when you're innocent, you put yourself in a bad position with federal charges.
If you're taking any piece of advice from this podcast, it is don't end up with federal charges.
Yes, absolutely. Now, the
Hidden
suspicious
secret.
activity report that you mentioned, that is a real thing as well. That's something that sometimes concerns people. Here's the thing about a SAR, a suspicious activity report. This is from the Bank Secrecy Act of 1978, and the Bank Secrecy Act is exactly what it sounds like. It is that the government and the banks are able to collude against you in complete secrecy without you ever knowing about it, and they can do things that you think would violate your civil rights, but nope, it's all included. People used to get up in arms about the Patriot Act that came out of 9/11. The Bank Secrecy Act is just as devious, and it's been around for almost 50 years. And so the Bank Secrecy Act can basically mean they can go through and file suspicious activity reports about you, and they keep a file in some warehouse somewhere of all the things that you could have been doing that could possibly be signs of a financial crime, money laundering or structuring and things like that. And casinos are supposed to file them anytime you do a lot of things that are very mundane in a casino, such as go up to the cage and ask for small bills from your large bills, or go up to the cage and ask for large bills from a bunch of small bills. That actually usually generates a suspicious activity report. Asking the casino cage, the cashier, when are the hours of their gaming day? Most casinos are 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. But if you ask that, that should be filed as a suspicious activity. Leaving the casino with chips that you don't cash in is a suspicious activity report filing that should be made by the casino. Look, they don't do all of these. Like they would just spend all their time filing reports, but they do file tens of thousands of them a year across the 400 or so casinos in the US. Don't worry about suspicious activity reports. I'd like to say that that scene at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're wheeling the Ark of the Covenant into this big warehouse, that's where they keep the SARs. That's where they keep the suspicious activity reports, because I can't imagine them ever being able to process the tons and tons of data they have on very innocuous transactions.
That's a very, very good point to make there. And I was not expecting an indie reference on this podcast, but
Right?
always
Pop
love it.
culture
That's
from Captain Jack. It's a rare
absolutely
thing.
that's a shocker. That was a massive underdog ticket that cashes on the show here.
Cash it.
So we've talked a little bit about cashing the tickets here. Now you can also cash tickets at the cage. Is that
Yes.
better, worse, no different?
Okay, so that's like this is like a good hack to know. And that is when the sports book is closed, you can go cash your sports bet tickets at the cage, at the main cashier in the casino. Uh, you have to be kind of careful though, because I have heard more than one report of a casino mispaying them based on like dead heat rules or a parlay where one leg pushed and the other leg should be downgraded to a. So in other words, it doesn't show up on the betting slip exactly what your payout should be, and when it goes through the casino cage, suddenly the payout is not what it's expected to be. So you got to be a little bit careful with that. But for the most part, this is a good hack. If you ever think you need to cash tickets, but you're afraid that the sports book is on to you, and if you were to go to the sports book clerk or wherever, they would probably give you the tap. Here's the problem. If you're ever in that situation where the sports book is on to you, they lock the tickets. That's their MO lately. And so if you go to the main casino cage, it doesn't make a difference. They're going to say this ticket is locked. I can't cash it. And hopefully they hand it back to you. Sometimes they just keep it. So be wary of that. I know guys that they tend to hoard up a bunch of tickets because they have so many winning tickets, and they plan to I'll just go in one day at the end of the season and give ID, and if the jig is up for me, then it's up. And unfortunately, you know, they find out like all the tickets are locked, and the casino's like, we're not paying any of these because you violated the rules of the kiosk, which were don't make a rebet on the same kiosk. Which, amazingly enough, there are a lot of casinos that'll have a little sign that says you're not allowed to make a rebet on the kiosk. It's kind of ridiculous. It's only going to be selectively enforced, but DraftKings in Atlantic City has these big obnoxious placards on the kiosk that says you can't rebet. They're also the ones that for a while the maximum amount of money that you could feed in was a $20 bill. You couldn't feed in a 50, you couldn't feed in a $100 bill. You could only transact 20s. So they've had war on kiosks for a while down there, the war at the shore.
Now, I want to ask a couple more questions about the actual operations of the kiosk. And by that, I mean when you're putting your money in and making your bets here. First question for you. Do you have a recommendation as far as how much money to put in? If I've got $1,000 that I want to put into a group of bets, am I better off putting them in one ticket at a time? Like I want to make a $200 bet, I put in $200, or am I okay just sliding $1,000 in, and then making whatever bets I want to make?
Optimally, you want to put in as little cash as possible so that if for some reason you have to stop your betting and cash out, and of course they give you just a little white slip that is your cash out amount, is as small as possible. Because when you have like only $40 left over, it's a lot easier to either use that in a future betting session or get that turned into cash at the counter. When you have one that's $900 left over, then that becomes a little bit more of a liability of getting that cashed right away. So I like to tell people to put in as minimal as they need to for betting. But I realize like you don't want to be just fumbling through bills and putting in bills and then making a bet and then doing it all again. You'd rather just feed them all in and get jamming.
But that's not like as far as casino operations, no one's looking at that like, oh, he put $1,000 in the machine.
Only if they're trying to track you for seeing if you are going to go over a $3,000 or $10,000 limit, and they'd be tracking that from the eye in the sky. They might be replaying what your session was there at the kiosk as well. So, yeah, it's probably best to just put in the minimal.
Now, when it comes to the degree of which they can see what you're doing, like you said, eye in the sky can see this stuff, but you're not trying to head fake a casino by looking at football lines before you go to bet golf. Like you don't have to get that in depth with it.
Yeah, I don't think you do. That would be some next level trickery is like you go up and you spend 20 minutes building this 8 team parlay for $5, and then after that prints out you just go and ram jam like $500 bets. That would be
Mhm.
some extra level ninja move. I no, chances are it's not like they're profiling your account like you would if you had like a mobile betting account. They're
Mhm.
not looking at that and going, oh, okay, well, he's shopping around a bunch of MMA exact result bets. We don't need to pay attention to him. They're really only seeing what happens when the ticket is printed. That's what they get alerted to as to when the bet is made.
So they are looking at that on the mobile app.
Well, I don't know if they are or not, but I was
All
saying
right.
like you can lay cover on a mobile app. Like you
Mhm.
want to lay some cover. I don't think you need to lay cover at a kiosk
Mhm.
in one session.
And then my other question for you there, I know you've talked about this on one of the premium live streams, and I found it really interesting. Try to stay off your phone. Try to
Yeah.
not have a spreadsheet or something out to track your bets when you're doing them, right?
Yeah, this is kind of important because if they suspect you are someone who has an edge or you're a runner for somebody else, which, depending on the state, might not be legal in their eyes. They don't realize that you have an equity share with whoever you're making this running for. But bottom line is, uh, if they retrace your steps around the casino or around the sports book, you don't want to be like pulling up unabated and saying, okay, well, here's the bet that I want to make, and then have that in front of you as you go to use the kiosk. But what's the way around that, right? It's tough. Sometimes I like to use the Notes app on my phone and just because everyone's using their phone in a casino. Sometimes I like to go and a lot of the places still have the old betting sheets, and I'll write down my bets on
Hmm.
the margins of the betting sheet and then go to the kiosk. And that just looks like you made some, back of napkin calculations while you were looking to make these bets. That's a good option. But the last thing is, and this is more of an AP angle type of thing, you never want to be holding your phone flat. And those watching on YouTube can see that I'm holding my phone flat because the cameras are above you and they're looking down at you, and they can read your phone over your shoulder easily enough. You want to hold your phone a little bit more vertical because that makes it a lot tougher, especially if you hold it close to you. It makes it a little tougher for them to read it over your shoulder. This is useful for anyone that's working as a team, because you don't want them to kind of figure out what you're doing as a team in any kind of AP pursuit. They do make screen protectors that are
Hmm.
so that you can't see your phone unless you have it at the correct angle. That's somewhat useful for the average person that is trying to hide what's on their phone. And the last thing is keep your phone as dim as possible. That'll help in thwart anyone that's trying to see over your shoulder from the eye in the sky.
Now, before we head out here, we talked about being tapped on the shoulder and flashing your player's card. Walk me through an interaction. Walk me through what you would say this is what you should do in the event that you are tapped on the shoulder from beginning to end here.
Uh, Look, the thing that you need to do whenever you're in a casino as an AP or in a sports book is you don't want to be memorable. Okay. If somebody taps you on the shoulder and you just run, you're memorable. They're like, what was that guy doing? I was just going to ask him if he wanted to sign up for a player's card. So the majority of situational things within a sports book are usually pretty innocuous. They want you to sign up for a player's card. They want to, it's usually the player's card is really what it is. And if you're polite to them, and even if you don't want a player's card, you'd be like, no, I'm good. I was just leaving. Thanks. Bye. That's better than running out. Especially like when you're in a sports book, obviously, look, I have my unabated shirt on today. I'm not going to get it on camera, but I wouldn't wear my unabated shirt to a sports book, maybe to Circa or, a sports book that takes sharp action. But I wouldn't wear it to, my local DraftKings. And neither should you. You should make sure you have a hat or just be dressed like you're just one of the guys that's there. Have a hat of the local team or wear a sweatshirt of the local team, things like that. And you just look like you're just Joe the better that's out there to enjoy his time in the sports book. And trust me, you will blend in a lot more than you even realize. Even if you feel like all the eyes are on you, they're not.
Yeah.
You can be pretty anonymous in a sports book.
Nothing blends in more on an NFL Sunday than wearing a jersey. Like if I wear my Jets jersey to the book and I want to go and cram a bunch of stuff that might be AP, they're going to take one look at that and be like, "Well, he's just chasing losses from another miserable Jets performance."
That's a great angle.
Hmm.
Absolutely true.
And the other thing to remember there is the security guard that's tapping you on the shoulder isn't necessarily someone who has any idea how the sports book works at all. It could just be someone who's like the security guard at the stadium doesn't know who's making the popcorn. They're just tapping you on the shoulder because somebody told them they got to go and check your ID real quick. They don't necessarily,
Yes.
they don't even necessarily care. They just have to check the box.
Here's a good tell for you. If there's one person that approaches you and there's not six other people that have now surrounded you, you're good. Okay, you're good. I've been in many situations where I get tapped on the shoulder and I am surrounded, and then there's guys surrounding them. Like there's no way I'm making out of there. It's like that scene from Casino where, the one time at the Flamingo, he actually breathed a breath of fresh air before, yeah, it's
Was that
so
Casino
anyway.
or Ocean's 11?
That was Ocean's 11. See, I tried two pop culture references on the same episode and failed. Um, but no, point being is when your goose is cooked, you're going to be able to tell because there's going to be a phalanx of security guards to making sure, that you abide by what they're about to tell you, which is typically to just get out of here.
Yeah.
Um, and then you just leave. You don't pass go, don't collect $200. But for the most part, when it's just one person, especially if it's somebody that looks like they're just doing their job, just let them do their job.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want to remember. And, when it comes to cashing tickets, we talked about that. Go up, if you're going up to the counter, be friendly, be nice. What did you tell me? Like $5 for every $1,000 wagered?
Yeah, tipping is really a personal preference. I
Hmm.
prefer to tip when I know I'm going to be seeing this person again. And so I've been known to tip while making a bet. I've been known to make an extra parlay bet for the boys, and tell you, oh, that one's for you. I've been known to, when I'm cashing out, yeah, I'll tip. I'll usually tip five plus whatever small bills and change I get as a result of the transaction. So if I am, cashing out, it was $1,000 win or so, I'll tip five plus, whatever singles and change that I get. And I'll just, okay, that's for you. Thanks. Turn and go. Not like I have to be like, hey, I hooked you up. Look, there are guys that have made a career out of social engineering by tipping the right people. Tip the people that don't expect to be tipped, and they're going to be on your side.
Yeah.
Security guards are a good example. Tipping a security guard without having to be, because they're being told to go after you is a good play. A lot of them won't take the tip. It really depends on the jurisdiction, but tip supervisors because they usually don't get tipped. Tip the clerks, obviously, if you're going to be interacting with the same clerk. If you're there on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. because you're betting NBA props and it's always the same woman behind the counter, and you're like, well, I got to put some through at the counter just to be a little bit more normal, be a good tip because you're going to see her again and again. And, you want the people that like you to remember your face. You want the people that potentially don't like you to not remember your face.
As Todd Wilkinson said, it's not tipping I believe in, it's over tipping. And whoever can get that reference right and send it to me, I'll send you guys an Unabated shirt. But
That you should
Jack,
not wear in a casino.
yes, you should definitely not wear it in a casino. But Jack, I think that this has been a great episode here. Very rare that we get this many pop culture references and also don't even talk about actual things that you should be betting on in the course of an episode. But I think this has been a great one, really valuable for people. And I hope that they feel the same and that they use that to like, subscribe, and share. Leave that 5-star rating and review for the show. We definitely appreciate it. And as always, tell a friend, help us grow the show. But for now, that is going to do it for us here on the pod. We will be back next week. And of course, as always, best of luck and cash some tickets and remember to tip. We'll see you next time, everybody.